This is the State of Things from North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. I'm Frank Stasio. Politicians worldwide felt the heat on climate policy this week after a reported 4 million protesters took to the streets. The leader of the global climate strike, Greta Thunberg, told world leaders that they had stolen her dreams. The call to arms was bolstered by the release of a United Nations report on the Earth's changing oceans. Representatives from all 195 member states agreed on the integrity of the marine research. The panel confirms that sea level rise is indeed happening at an astonishing rate. Acidifying waters is also part of the report, and more extreme weather, all in the forecast. Meanwhile, in North Carolina, Governor Cooper declared this week Clean Energy Week, and the declaration coincides with the presentation of the NC Clean Energy Plan. So to tell us about that and how oceanic climate change affects all of North Carolina, state climatologist is here with us, Kathy Dello. Welcome to the State of Things. Good to have you here.
Thanks for having me. Also
with us today, Lisa Sorg, environmental reporter with NC Policy Watch. It's a project of the left-leaning North Carolina Justice Center. Lisa Sorg, welcome to the State of Things.
Thanks a lot, Frank.
Let me stick with you and talk about, in broad strokes, tell us what was in this UN report on oceans and climate.
Well, it was a very sobering report. It's 1,170 pages long. I concentrated on reading the low-lying areas because our coast is what's specifically at risk here. One of the things they talked about was that, for example, the oceans are becoming more acidic, and that's going to hurt our oyster industry, for example, because they can't make shells, or their shells are flimsy. That's one thing. The other thing, that areas sink more than others as the sea levels rise. It depends on where you live. And for example, northeastern North Carolina, Dare County, is naturally sinking, but the sea level exacerbates that because it's rising. And so they also talked about the economic infrastructure. There's also a human element to it, about the psychology and sociology. If you have to move your home, which is just happening in Duplin County. Duplin County just received $1.8 million to relocate 17 homes. What is home then?
Right. I mean, the idea of climate change refugees is something we're really going to have to cope with. And as you say, we've already begun.
Yes.
We've already begun to allocate money because we can't live there anymore. But also the kind of accelerating effects. I think we see sometimes climate change as kind of this linear problem. You know, by year X it's going to be this, and by year Y the sea level rise. We talked about mollusks at risk because of increasing acidification of the water. So those mollusks are cleaning our watersheds and cleaning. So if we lose them, some of the cleaners and cleansers that we had counted on, and now we can see the dynamics of these effects as well.
Right, and there are also coastal problems in that when there's flooding, wastewater treatment plants overflow, so you don't have the cleansing effect of the mollusks. I mean, what struck me about the report is how it's all intertwined.
Right. Well, Kathy, tell us what struck you. We've been reading lots of reports on climate change. We all have. What struck you about this one?
Yeah, so I've been doing this for a while, and we were able to talk about climate change as a future problem, and we don't have that luxury anymore. And the gravity of the message that they were sending to us, that we could walk out of this room today and stop using fossil fuels, and the ocean's still going to rise a foot. We still have a really big problem ahead of us.
And talk about the integrity of this report. It's fairly interesting because it's a United Nations report. As I say, all 195 nations participate. That's a big committee to weigh in on a report. Talk about sort of the vetting and the integrity of this report.
Yeah, that's a huge committee, and scientists are the harshest critics of each other. So to think that we would all be in on some hoax is kind of crazy, but what this committee does is it takes already peer-reviewed literature, so it's already gone through a review process. They look at it, evaluate it, and say, is this the message we want to send? Then it goes through another review process, and then it goes out for public comment, and then all 195 countries sit down and go through the summary line by line.
Well, okay, so a lot of vetting goes on. I mean, in my mind, this makes it a somewhat conservative report. The wacky stuff couldn't possibly get out. There's too many people filtering this thing. So let's talk about the impact on the state of North Carolina. You are the state climatologist. Let's start with Wilmington. What does this mean for Wilmington?
So Wilmington's already seeing the impacts of climate change. They see nuisance flooding every year, about 71 days per year. 2 months out of the year, Wilmington has streets that are flooded, basements that flood, storm drains that are overfilling, just enough to ruin your day. By mid-century, that number could go up to 300. And that would be most of the year with flooded streets in Wilmington.
And again, then you're talking about people who are essentially forced to move, businesses forced to move. They can't be there anymore.
Yeah.
You can't have enough pumps to clean out your basement. And what about things like waterborne illness? I guess if we have all the standing water and low-lying areas that are underwater, Lisa Sorg, is that also an issue?
Most definitely. I mean, you would have mosquito-borne illnesses. You would have pathogens in the water. And so the drinking water would basically be off limits. And also, people often flee and they get into the floodwaters. Those floodwaters, even currently, are filled with all sorts of terrible things. You also have hazardous waste dumps, you have landfills. So these rising seas and the so-called nuisance flooding has serious, serious ramifications.
What about, is there any way, Kathy, to assess, we can take a look at and make projections about sea level rise, the impact on mollusks. What about economic damage? Have we been able to make that kind of an assessment?
We have, and we can look to recent disasters as a proxy. So Florence was about a $22 billion disaster. This report and the National Climate Assessment is saying that by mid-century we could be spending $60 billion per year on coastal damages. So essentially,
you're just talking about, maybe, but forgive me, but you're just talking about storms here. These are the catastrophic events,
yes,
and not the normalization of high water and moving people.
No, these are just storms from a single storm. People haven't recovered from Florence on year. These effects will accumulate.
Well, particularly tough for any storm, but when you have two 500-year events in 3 years, yeah, we understand that. So we're talking about the coast, but what about inland? What about a place like Raleigh?
So in Raleigh, we certainly have climate change impacts happening here. We're seeing more extreme rainfall. Raleigh is one of the cities where heat waves are outpacing national trends in terms of duration and intensity. And then we have a lot of people living here who don't have sufficient access to cooling, especially at night.
So those things are going on. I wonder about policy and if things are changing. Anecdotally, I was talking to someone who works right here in Raleigh as a lobbyist. They spend a lot of time with lawmakers. And this is all off the record, so we can't use any names, but this particular lobbyist was saying, for a long time, conservatives were simply denying, and they simply wouldn't talk about making policy changes that would acknowledge global warming. And now they're telling me privately, I got to take this seriously. Are we seeing any change when it comes to policy, Lisa Sorg?
I think so. The governor, or I guess it was upstairs today, was talking about in unveiling his his executive order 80 and the clean energy plan, said he had been meeting with leaders on the East Coast of North Carolina and saying they want solutions. They are living on the front lines. They can't deny this, and they are ready to use science and facts and data to do this.
Are there solutions out there? Are there places where there are solutions in effect already?
Well, I think the Dutch know a lot about water. So I think we're going to have to look at places where they've already had issues like this. One of the things that I think will eventually happen is that there are going to have to be more reinforcements in the infrastructure on the coast, and that takes money. So where is the money going to come from?
What about the latest plan, the NC Clean Energy Plan? As you say, that was announced just upstairs a couple of hours ago. What do we know about that?
Well, one of the major tenets of this plan is to deploy 80,000 electric vehicles registered in North Carolina by 2025. That's a tall order. There are only 9,500 right now. Part of that goal and will require more charging stations, because you don't want people to get stranded out in rural areas. So these charging stations would also be in rural areas, and incentivizing and educating people about these vehicles. They're not cheap, and so you have to somehow make the case that it's worth your investment.
So, Kathy Dello, are we beyond the point of talking seriously about policy, abatement policy, and simply resilience and resistance, ways to keep the water out?
We have to do both, and this report says that adaptation isn't enough alone. We need to mitigate our use of fossil fuels, and we need to start doing that quickly.
What does the report say about that, and how does it recommend we start doing that?
Well, it talks about water management and coastal management, but essentially we as a globe need to start reducing our fossil fuels, and the report doesn't make any recommendations about doing that, but the report is science to inform policy.
That's part of it, though. Let's stick with that for a moment, is that you can be a state and you can incentivize the use of, less fossil fuel using vehicles. But this is a global problem. You can't fix it by yourself. Does it make sense to generate a statewide policy on climate change?
We're all in this together, and North Carolina can be a leader on this issue, and a number of states have tried and are trying or are doing well, like California. And we have a moral imperative. We're contributing a lot to this problem as a country, and the folks who aren't contributing as much are getting hit the hardest.
Kathy Dello, a state climatologist, Lisa Sorg, an environmental reporter with NC Policy Watch. I want to thank you both for being with us today.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
You can find out more at our website, stateofthings.org. Just ahead, we preview the Wide Open Bluegrass Festival in Raleigh with some live music in our studio on the State of Things from North Carolina Public Radio, a broadcast service of the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Stay tuned. This is the State of Things broadcasting from the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences in downtown Raleigh. I'm Frank Stasio. Bluegrass has once again descended on Raleigh, the 7th annual Wide Open Bluegrass Festival in the City of Oaks. Week-long celebration features free music, a conference, and an awards ceremony. I'm going to give you a little preview of some of the music that you're going to hear this weekend. Irene Kelly has been a force on Nashville's Music Row for decades. Spent about 20 years writing or co-writing hit songs for country artists. But at the same time, she was quietly working on her career as a performer. Earlier this year, she released Benny's TV Repair. It's a record that is full of personal songs, and it recalls simpler times. Singer-songwriter Irene Kelly joins me in the studio now to talk about that album and her career. Irene, welcome. Good to have you here.
Great to be here, Frank. Thanks for having me.
Your daughter's with you, Justina.
She is. Justina's right here.
Justina is a singer-songwriter and an actress and joining you today. Good to have you here. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Frank. Good to be here.
You can watch a live stream of our conversation, by the way, at our website, stateofthings.org. You can also watch at our Facebook page. And we're at State of Things to watch the live stream here from the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences. Let's talk about this album. First of all, Benny's TV Repair. There's a story behind that.
There
name,
sure
right?
is. Yes, it runs deep and long. It's my father, Benny, was a handyman and very talented. and he fixed everything. And he kept everybody's cars running, even my friends when they came by. Let me check your tire pressure. Or, I better check your oil. You girls are going on a long drive. He was that guy. So he got interested in electronics and TVs. His brother had a TV repair shop in the next town over. So my dad sent away for a correspondence course in the back of a magazine from national schools. And long story short, 2 years later, he had a certificate. He was a certified TV repairman, and so proud. And so we had a sign made, and he hung it up in the basement along with all his tools and his.
That was his shop.
That was his shop, and he had it there until we sold the house.
That must have been something when you had to sell the house and that sign was still hanging
It
up.
really, I can still
Yeah.
see it. It was about the last thing still there.
What kind of music
Sure
did you
enough.
listen to growing up?
Well, he had the radio going 24/7, and he had country music on, and I was a teenager in a rock band, and so he was converting me slowly.
Did he? So it
Subtly.
wasn't that he had it on. He was just talking to you about music.
He was, and
yeah.
there was one song in particular that would come on the radio, and it was 1979 because that's when the song was #1 for Cal Smith, "Hello Country Bumpkin," and I loved that song, and it was a story song, of course. And when that song would come on, he'd yell up the stairs, "Hey, Rain, it's on!" And I'd go running down to listen to it. And so it was between that and then Dolly Parton's TV show that I became completely converted into country music.
We're going to save the Dolly Parton story for after this song. Will you
Okay.
do a song for us?
I sure will.
Yeah.
Justina and I are going to sing one that I wrote with Billy Smith called Thunderbird. I brought my brokenness in tow. Great Spirit, can you heal my soul? Fire my life with your holy word. Fly through me like a thunderbird. I cannot rest down by the stream. I'll bathe and climb, I dare to dream. The mountain steep, this I have heard. So fly through me like a thunderbird. Fly through me with the strength of a hurricane, the gentleness of a snow-white dove. Of mercy sweep the pain, and lead the peace in perfect love. Spread your wings, fly through me like a thunderbird. Many footsteps pass through here. Ancient voices raised in prayer. Spirits cry out, spirits thirst. Fly through me like a thunderbird. Fly through me with the strength of a hurricane, the gentleness of a snow-white dove. Of mercy sweep the pain, and lead the peace in perfect love. Spread your wings, fly through me like a thunderbird. Well, I am no different than the rest. I crave the truth and fear the test. Heaven send me peace on earth. Fly through me like a thunderbird. Fly through me with the strength of a hurricane, the gentleness of a snow-white dove. Of mercy sweep the pain, and leave the peace in perfect love. Spread your wings, fly through me like a thunderbird. Fly through me like a thunderbird.
Irene Kelly. The song is Thunderbird from her latest album, Benny's TV Repair. Her daughter, Justina Kelly, joined her on vocals, and you can see Irene Kelly perform today at 4 o'clock at the World of Bluegrass Street Fest on Hargett Street in downtown Raleigh. Beautiful song.
Thank you.
Tell me more about that song.
Well, I wrote that with Billy Smith, who's a great bluegrass writer-artist, and Billy showed up one day with a 4-string baritone guitar and a really cool and haunting lick on it, and the line, "Fly through me like a thunderbird." And he kept singing it over and over, and he goes, "I don't know what it means." I said, "I do." It's a Native American spiritual song, and then 1 hour later we had the song.
I mean, it's a beautiful image. It's a powerful image.
Thank you. It was one of those gifts that just kind of beamed right in it through us somehow. It was, a songwriter's gift, as we call it.
So you talk about certainly your father's love for country and your gift with country, but you started out in a rock and roll band.
I sure did. I was singing Led Zeppelin songs, mostly because Robert Plant sings like a girl, so I could sing along with the record.
That's right, I can do that.
Right, yeah.
In fact,
I don't have to change the key or anything. So I did that, and oh my gosh, I was such a fan of him and the sound, and of course the Rolling Stones, and later on Kansas, because they had a violin in the band. But I was just singing in a band, and I wasn't playing an instrument, and I ran into, of course, some bluegrassers from West Virginia, and one fella in particular said, "You need to pick up a guitar and you need to learn at least 3 chords and you'll be all set." And he was right. I did, and that actually happened. That was later on, and then, I was able to start playing the songs, and then songwriting kind of snuck up on me as I was learning songs and original ideas.
You've come a long way. You've done a lot with 3 chords, I'll tell you that.
You can do a lot with 3
You
chords.
can. That's right. Well, here, would you do another song for us?
Sure, absolutely. I'll do the title track for you. The song I wrote with Bob Ray, Justina's grandfather, Benny DeMaria. We didn't get to Pittsburgh much, it was 30 miles away. I didn't lose nothing there, that's what my dad would say. Had a little basement shop, AM radio, and I heard country music, and it never let me go. He took a correspondence course that he got in the mail. Bonafide, filled with pride, he learned to fix things well. Dressed like a working man, smiled like a millionaire, 'cause the sun said, Benny's TV Repair. Now he'd fix anything in town if he could find the part. He taught me how to stand my ground and how to trust my heart. My mama was the only woman that he ever loved, and the sparkle in his hazel eyes told you just as much. He took a correspondence course that he got in the mail. Bonafide, filled with pride, he learned to fix things well. Dressed like a working man, smiled like a millionaire, 'cause the sign said, Benny's TV Repair. Some things I've forgotten, and some things fade away. But one thing is so clear to me, burned into my brain. The sign that my brother made way back when we were kids, to this day still stands for who he was and what he did. took a correspondence course till he got in the mail. Bonafide, filled with pride, he learned to fix things well. Dressed like a working man, smiled like a millionaire. Cause the sign said, Benny's TV repair. Yeah, sometimes I almost see him standing there. Benny's TV repair.
Benny's TV Repair. That's Irene Kelly from her latest album, and it is entitled Benny's TV Repair, as a matter of fact. Her daughter Justina Kelly joined her on vocals, and you can see Irene Kelly perform today at 4th, the World of Bluegrass Street Fest on Hargett Street in downtown Raleigh, and you can watch this right now on our live stream of this conversation at our website, stateofthings.org, or at Facebook, State of Things. Another great song. And obviously, your father was a great inspiration for you, and here you are playing with your daughter.
I know, right? It doesn't get too much better than that.
How did that come about? Maybe I can ask you to change positions, because I'd like to ask Justina a question about kind of, because you're an actress as well and a singer.
That's right, yes.
And what's it like to be on stage with your mom?
Oh, it's a real treat. I've grown up, obviously, watching Mom and going on the road with her and just admiring her, and I always wanted to be a singer and a songwriter like her, and my sister as well. She's also a singer-songwriter, so it just runs in the family, and we're just so lucky to have a mom to make that example for us.
Well, and now that TV repair is no longer an industry, it's a good thing you picked up this and made it the family business.
Right, exactly.
Because otherwise you wouldn't be eating.
Exactly. It's a good option to have.
But it certainly was something that propelled you on your way. Irene, let me ask you a question, because singer-songwriter is part of, obviously what you're doing now, but for a long time you were writing hits for other people. It's one thing to pick up a guitar and play 3 chords. Were you thinking about going out on your own that whole time? Or?
Well, I moved to Nashville to be an artist and a singer, and I went to Nashville with basically a handful of songs, and so I had other people that really encouraged me to be a songwriter, and which was great because it enabled me to be in the music, be creative, and also raise my family and be in one spot. So that was really a good thing. But I always wanted to be making records. And so, there was, back in 1989, there was an attempt. I was signed by MCA Records, major label, and we did record a full album that did not come out. We had 2 singles come out, which is often the story of some of those records. And so, but I kept writing songs, and then eventually, made an independent record, and a couple independent records, and then the bluegrass community sort of was always calling in the background, so I returned to bluegrass, and now Mountain Fever this is our 2nd record out on the label, so it's all come back around that way.
Do another song for us now?
Sure. One called Bluegrass Radio that I wrote with our good friend Jerry Sally.
Know what's on my mind, like you know just what I need to hear, and even when you're hard for me to find, well, I keep on searching till you come in loud and clear, playing those songs, taking me back home, the ones about a simple life, the kind I used to know, warming my heart, just like the dashboard glow, not a better friend out on the road, than my bluegrass radio. There's nothing like a Clark Stanley song to satisfy my sentimental bone.
that high and lonesome sound I grew up on, keeping me company everywhere I go, playing those songs, taking me back home, the ones about a simple life, the kind I used to know, warming my heart just like the dashboard glow. Not a better friend out on the road than my bluegrass radio. Mile after mile after mile, it makes me smile. Playing those songs, taking me back home, the ones about a simple life, the kind I used to know. Warming my heart, just like the dashboard glow. Not a bad friend out on the road than my bluegrass radio. Not a better friend I've come to know than my bluegrass radio. Ooh.
Singer and songwriter Irene Kelly performing Bluegrass Radio from her latest album, Benny's TV Repair. Her daughter Justina Kelly joined her on vocals, and you can see Irene Kelly perform today, 4 o'clock, at the World of Bluegrass Street Fest on Hargett Street in downtown Raleigh. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having us.
We're live streaming this right now at our Facebook page and at our website, stateofthings.org, and coming up on the State of Things, the music of Carolina Blues. Stay tuned. This is The State of Things. I'm Frank Stasio, broadcasting live from the North Carolina Museum of Natural Sciences in downtown Raleigh. Today, celebrating the Wide Open Bluegrass Festival, and our next band earned 3 nominations for International Bluegrass Music Association Awards. Carolina Blue, one of the contenders for the New Artist of the Year recognition, though they've been around for a decade. I don't know where y'all have been, but they've been here for 10 years. And so it's great to see you. They're in the studio with me now, and they're going to talk about their latest album, I Hear Bluegrass Calling Me. Carolina Blue, Timmy Jones on mandolin, Bobby Powell on the guitar, Reese Combs on the bass, James McDowell on the banjo, and Ainsley Porchak on the fiddle. And they all do a lot of singing. Welcome, Carolina Blue. Good to have you here. Thank you so much for being here.
Great to be here.
Really great to see you. And I want to remind everybody that you can watch a live stream of our conversation at our website, stateofthings.org, and also watch it at our Facebook page, The State of Things. So I've got Timmy and Bobby on the show, which means I've got an episode of Lassie, I think. This is great. I love having you guys on the show. I don't think I've ever had a Timmy and Bobby on the
Now,
show.
hold on just a minute.
No.
Which one of us is Lassie?
Well, no, I just mean that isn't Timmy and Lassie and Bobby would be down at the well and Cully, Mr. Culpepper. Remember Mr. Culpepper? He was the guy who was in the well. Nobody remembers that part. Listen, tell us about the name, Carolina Blue. Where's that come from?
Well, everybody thinks it comes from Chapel Hill basketball, but it does not. Tim named our band, and we named it Carolina Blue because the Tar Heel Boys was already taken, and we wanted to name our band after our home state of North Carolina. We're proud North Carolinians, just like Monroe named his band after his home state of Kentucky.
You just tell everybody where in North Carolina you're from.
We're from Brevard, North Carolina, up in the western part of the state, land of the waterfalls.
Land of the waterfalls and a lot of good music.
Yes, sir.
Comes from up there. This band has really been around since 2007. Tell us how you came together as a band.
Well, sort of by necessity. Tim and I did a solo project recording. Woody Platt, who's another North Carolinian with Steve Canyon Rangers, produced this album. The album came out in 2007, started getting some airplay on the radio, and then we started getting some calls for shows, and we didn't have a band to go play the bookings, so we formed a band.
You're like the Monkees.
You're right, exactly.
That's great. So you became your own wrecking crew. Well, I tell you what, we can talk later. Would you do a song for us now?
You bet.
Thank you.
I hear bluegrass calling me. I hear bluegrass calling me. Listen to the fiddles, hear that banjo ring. Now that's bluegrass calling me. From the big state of Kentucky to the heart of Tennessee, and then on down to the Great Ole Opry. You can hear those fiddles and the old brothers sing. Now that's bluegrass calling me. I hear bluegrass calling me. I hear bluegrass calling me. Listen to the fiddles, hear that banjo ring. Now that's bluegrass calling me. Well, I'm not a kicking country music. I still listen every day. But I just like that bluegrass music. And I believe Bill Monroe sure stay. bluegrass calling me. I hear bluegrass calling me. Listen to the fiddles, hear that banjo ring. Now that's bluegrass calling me. Yodelay, yodelay, yo, yodelay.
Carolina Blue, I Hear Bluegrass Calling Me from their latest record of the same name. Bobby Powell on guitar. Timmy Jones is on the mandolin, James McDowell on the banjo, Reese Combs on the bass. They're all doing the singing, plus Ainsley Porchak is on the fiddle. And you can see him tonight at the Wide Open Bluegrass Festival on Davie Street Stage, 8 o'clock. And we're live streaming right now at stateofthings.org. What a great song. What a great song. And what I love about that were the dramatic tempo changes in that. It's like a suite. That's really cool. Timmy, let me ask you a little bit more about that song, because I know Roy Chapman wrote that, right?
Yes, sir, that's right. Our mentor, Roy Chapman, that's who me and Bobby sort of got started in bluegrass with.
But tell us about his importance and the influence that he
Well,
had on
I tell you, we wouldn't be where we are today without Roy Chapman. He gave us our first job in bluegrass. We've played together since we were children, but he gave us our first job. And he taught us how to sing harmonies. And he taught me especially a lot about playing mandolin. I was playing mandolin ever since I was a small child, but I really learned a lot from Roy. I learned a lot of fiddle numbers and stuff like that, and like I say, how to sing harmony. And Roy wrote a lot of great songs. And
in a case like that, I love to know this, how musicians kind of transfer their information. I mean, it's one thing to learn the fiddle song, I like where to put your fingers. Mm-hmm. But is there anything about his technique, his style, just the way he approached the instrument that changed the way you looked at it?
I'll tell you, it's kind of funny now. Roy was not the best of the teachers now. He would basically, he would play his fiddle and say, boy, it goes like this right here, and then you had to just he would slow it down a little bit, but you had to. So we had to pick up on it best we could, but he did teach us a lot.
What's Bobby? Let me ask you now that you talked about playing locally, suddenly having to put a band together, but now you have a national reputation. Does that change anything for you as a band?
Well, yeah, of course it does. We're making a little more gas money now when we're going out and playing, which is nice. But I mean, having your songs on the radio, and we were in Missouri last weekend, for example, first time we'd ever been at this festival, and folks were requesting our songs from our albums, and that's the greatest feeling in the world, that they weren't requesting a Bill Monroe tune that we did. They were requesting songs that we'd written. So yeah, I mean, that's great.
Can you do a song for us now?
You bet. You bet.
Rusty rails, don't you know my heart is broken today in a million ways. The whistle's blowing, old number 9 is carrying me away, and I just can't stay.
I've got to get away from the past that's haunting me. At night I close my eyes and her face is all I see. So Rusty Rail, please help me set her free. Far away to a place that I can call home. No matter where, just so that I am long gone. I'll ride along these rusty rails.
Lonely boxcar, you're the perfect place for a broken heart. Look upon that blue stars all alone, with a rumbling on the wheels in the dark. Since we had to part,
I'm running from a memory and the pain of yesterday, drowning in my sorrow from a love that ran astray. So Rusty Rail, help me make my getaway. Far away to a place that I can call home. rusty rails. When I get where I'm going, I'll ride this train no more. I'll step into a brand new life and I'll back the road so rusty rails. Please carry me on far away to a place that I can call home. No matter where, just so that I'm long gone, I'll ride along these rusty rails.
Rusty Rails, Carolina Blue from their latest record, I Hear Bluegrass Calling Me. Timmy Jones on the mandolin, Bobby Powell on the guitar, Reese Combs on the bass, James McDowell is on the banjo, and Ainsley Porchak is on the fiddle. You can see him tonight at Wide Open Bluegrass on Davie Street at 8 o'clock, and we're streaming live on stateofthings.org and on our Facebook page, The State of Things. Another great song, and Bobby, that's one that you and Timmy wrote together. Tell us a little bit about your creative process.
Yes, sir. Well, for that, we don't really have a process. We just, it all happens by happy accidents, kind of like Bob Ross's painting. It's happy accidents, you know. But for that particular song, we were in the studio recording another album, and we had an off night where we weren't really doing anything. We were having some fiddle put on the record, and I had this idea about this song because there's a lot of abandoned railroad tracks in Brevard where we live. No trains run through there anymore, and so I wanted to write a song about that. And so we sat down together and noodled around and just couldn't do anything with it. And so it just kind of got pushed to the side for maybe a year. And we were at a writing session one night, and Tim said, I've been thinking about this song that we started about the Rusty Rails. He said, let's just change it. Let's just throw that out. And he said, I have an idea about, let's do it like a lost love song where a guy's lost the woman he loves, so he's going to hop on a train and get out of town. And so 10 minutes later, the song was written, and it was the #1 song for us this year. So that's our creative process.
So it will, but so as a high lonesome love song and tribute to the Lost Railroad, not so good. But as a metaphor for lost love, it's perfect, right?
Sure.
Well, it's great. But what about one of you tend to be more the lyrics guy, and the other one the melody guy, or not so much?
Well, I never start with a melody. I guess you've got a melody in your head, but I get a good line running through my head, and I can't speak for Tim. I think he works a lot more with melodies to begin with than I do, but I work mainly with lyrics. Yeah, I'll get a good chorus. I'll be driving down the road, and I'll sing to Tim and say, hey, put some verses on this for me, bud. This next song we're going to sing happened that way. I wrote the chorus. Tim wrote all the verses for it, and that turned out real nice for us.
Is that Longing for Home?
No, that is Cold, Lonely, and Blue.
Okay, so before you get to that, I got to ask you a couple more questions, which is, number one, do you get back to Brevard much?
Couple of days a week, don't we? Yeah. And not much lately. We spent more time in that RV than we spent in our beds. But this is quickly becoming a full-time occupation for us. I still work a job. That's become a part-time job now, and this has become a full-time job. But we all do a little side work still. James and Ainsley teach, and Reese does some construction, and Tim has a cattle farm that he runs, but the music's slowly taking all that over.
I wonder if I can ask Ainsley a question,
Sure.
if that'd be all right, about playing the fiddle and how you came to this music in bluegrass, and whether you're from that part of the country as well.
Absolutely. I was born in Ontario, Canada, and so I'm a long ways from home, but I ended up in this area because I started in 2013 at the ETSU school, East Tennessee State University. They had a bluegrass, old time, and country music studies program that I went to. I completed my bachelor's degree there, and I'm currently still there. I'm getting a master's in Appalachian Studies. I will be finished in December, but these guys saw me playing a video at the university with the director of the bluegrass program. We were playing twin fiddles. They had just lost their fiddle player, and it was the perfect fit. They contacted me, and I was I was hired very soon.
Did you listen to much bluegrass? And is it popular up there in Ontario?
It is popular, but not near as much as here. My fiddle teacher introduced me to the music of Kenny Baker, Bobby Hicks, all of those classic bluegrass fiddlers when I was probably about 13 or so, and I fell in love with the music and had to learn more about it.
Well, we're going to hear some more about it. Just now, I want you would all play us out, but first let everybody know that your Carolina Blue, Bobby Powell on guitar, Timmy Jones on the mandolin, James McDowell on the banjo, Reese Combs on the bass, and Ainsley Porchak on the fiddle. They're going to be at the Wide Open Bluegrass Festival on Davie Street tonight at 8 o'clock, and you can find out more at our website, stateofthings.org. Great to have you here, and great to say I knew you when, because you may not be back. You may not have time for us the next time, but thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks for having us here.
North Carolina Public Radio broadcast service of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. I'm Frank Stasio. Once again, the music of Carolina Blue.
Like the Wild West wind that blows across the prairie, or the snow falling on the hill so high. Your love left a scar so deep within my memory. All I do now is hang my head and cry. There's nothing colder than a rainstorm in December. Nothing lonelier than drinking all alone. Nothing bluer than those mountains in Virginia. Except for me, since my darling's up and gone. Yeah. Oh, I hear you, son. Oh, the pain in my heart is so heavy. Since you left me, darling, with goodbye. Oh, I hope that I will never more see you and be reminded of these lonesome tears I cry. There's nothing colder than a rainstorm in December. Nothing lonelier than drinking all alone. Nothing bluer than those mountains in Virginia. Except for me, since my darling's up and gone. There's nothing colder than a rainstorm in December. Nothing lonelier than drinking all alone. Nothing bluer than those mountains in Virginia. Except for me, since my darling's up and gone. Except for me, since my darling's up and gone.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wow.